don't flip flop, man. That's why you don't flip flop. Like flip flops are for the pool, man, not for YouTube. I got taught a brutal lesson there, boy. I got exposed. You know what I mean? Terence Crawford. Let's give all right. First things first. I don't want to sound like a Crawford hater. I don't want to sound like a Spence fanboy, even though at some point I'm going to sound like both. Let's tip our hats, right? Absolutely electric performance from Crawford. Just the game face on him, right? The game face throughout, yeah. Just so composed, never flustered, calm, relaxed, focused on everything he had to do, right? And nothing else. Um, did what he usually do, soaks up the first couple of rounds, right? Just analyzes the movements, analyzes where he thinks the counters are. Obviously, being a switcher and have been able to counter with both hands, like caught Spence, I think it was the second or either the third round, right? And Crawford, sorry, Spence just overcommitting somewhat and forgetting, this guy can count you with either hand. Dropped him, bit of a flash knockdown really at that point, but you just started to notice from the third round onwards, Spence was getting marked up, right? And this is where I might end up becoming a bit of a hater, but we'll come back to that. So Spence started getting marked up. I thought he came straight back out and maybe won the next round. So if he got dropped in the third, he came out and won the fourth. But after that, it was just one-way traffic, really. The counters were just there. Spence wasn't able to maintain his work rate. This is one of the things I said in the flip-flop video. If Spence is able to maintain his work rate, yeah, then I don't know whether Crawford will be able to live with that, but he wasn't. He really, really wasn't. He was trying, absolute warrior, but he wasn't able to keep up that work rate. He was getting hurt with every counter. He was getting marked up as well. And I think that, as I was alluding to earlier, really that comes down to the weight. Spencer's 33. He's been fighting at welterweight his entire career, right? He was fighting at the same weight in the amateurs in London 2012, right? I mean, we're talking a long time, man. We're talking 11 years. He's been at pretty much at that weight class, and he clearly wasn't the same fighter. And the other thing that I say, again, not to be a hater, but fuck it, you've got to say it, yeah. Crawford was the bigger guy in there. Crawford was the bigger guy. This is a guy who's come up from 135, 140, 147, right? Was fighting in much lower weights in the amateurs, and he got in there. He was the bigger guy. Like you measure it by like how they look in their back, right? And how the width of their shoulders. Like if you look at Crawford's back and you look at Spencer's back, Crawford was the bigger guy in there, right? And you see from his merchandise, he was rocking the snack caps, and snack is that's the nutrition firm of like the former Balco, right? Victor Conte, who was done for roiding up mad athletes. So I mean, like, and now he runs a legitimate nutrition firm. And to be fair, Snack work with a lot of boxers, right? But nah, man, there's something not legit about that. That's not to say, for all I know, Spencer's on the naughty stuff as well. But Crawford is definitely on the naughty stuff. Like, to come in there and for all these years, the talk has been like Spence would be too big for him, and Crawford comes in there like the bigger man, like noticeably the bigger man. Like, how do you get so big at 35 all of a sudden, man? Um, but anyway, like the boxing skills he demonstrated, the footwork as well from Crawford, staying in and out of range, like being just so composed and selective with when he wants to catch and shoot and when he wants to fire in them counters. Um, Spence did everything he could, but like I said in all my earlier videos, apart from the flip-flop, ultimately you have one fighter who's a methodical pressure fighter and knows one way, and then you've got an improvisational genius, right? who can do the unexpected, who can really sharpshoot and really, do things that are I'm just waiting for the post-fight interview here, but I really like do things that are unexpected. And ultimately Spence couldn't do that. Yeah, when it wasn't working, he didn't have any other options. But Crawford is just he was oh man, he looked at absolute $1 million in there. And it just felt like whatever Spence wanted to do, he could adapt. But Crawford was able to go in there with a real strong game plan because obviously you've seen Spence fight, you've seen Derek James fighters fight, and he kind of knew that there wasn't anything that Spence could do if it wasn't working. The only thing that Spence could do is fight harder or pick up the intensity. But if anything, that was making him more vulnerable. These are all points that I made in earlier videos. But because Crawford's just got so many options, there wasn't anything that Spence could really do about that. I don't know what happens now because the rematch clause, there's a mutual rematch clause at 154. So whichever fight loses has an option on pre-negotiated terms to execute an immediate rematch, right? And I don't know whether Spence would do it. I mean, I would imagine just for his pride, he'd want to have a go at 54, right? Like he didn't look himself. He hasn't fought in 18 months. He's had one fight in 2.5 years, and he looked weight drained, right? So maybe he'll want to have a go at 54. But the fact is, it was so one-sided. And I feel like Crawford has gotten worked out, and Spence really only has the one style. I don't know if it would make any difference. I really, really don't. I think you'd probably get the same outcome at 54. Maybe Spencer's a bit more durable when it goes to points, but I can't see with him breaking down Crawford and getting him out of there because especially now, like the whole like confidence dynamic is completely gone, right? Um, so yeah, man, maybe he wants to give it another go and just like, you know, for his own pride and for his own final payday. I don't think that there's he can't fight Jamal. Jamal's obviously unified at 154, but that's his training partner. So it's either retirement or a rematch at 154. Maybe Spence does it, you know. Um, and even if he doesn't win, if he can take it to points and recover some pride from the situation, but we'll see. For Crawford now, again, like I'm gonna sound like a hater, but like he looked electric, but he waited till Spence was really, really, really drained at the weight. He's had one fight in almost 3 years, injuries, car crashes, and whatever. I don't know, man. I don't know what it is about him. I feel like the same way everyone used to criticize Floyd, yeah, for cherry picking his opponents and only fighting the right guys at the right time and fighting guys that were like maybe coming towards the end. I felt like okay, I can kind of see that, but it's really unfair because Floyd fought a lot of guys, yeah, that were still active and went on to win world titles afterwards, yeah. You know, Floyd fought a lot of guys in their in damn near their prime, um, and but I feel like Crawford is kind of taking that up to the next level, yeah. Like everything that people criticize Floyd about, I think like can be rightly aimed towards Crawford, or maybe I'm just a fucking hater. I don't know, but at the end of the day, undisputed in two weight classes, becomes the first person in the four belt era, I believe, to do that. Right. So undisputed 140, undisputed 147. There's a lot of people who lineage have done it, but to have actually held all four belts, and at two weight class, no one's done that. Obviously, Usyk's close, right? But yeah, that Fury fight hasn't happened. Tio, if nobody had vacated belts, you could say he did it as well. But the fact is they did vacate belts. And so, and there's a few other people as well who have got, close. And maybe if it wasn't for, even Floyd, if it wasn't for belts being vacated, maybe he could have done it. But the fact is, no one's done it till Crawford, man. So you have to tip your hat. He looked $1 million. Footwork on point, counter punching on point, just the ring IQ, the punch selection, the power as well. You know, massive power up at welterweight. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you got your tip your hat to him, he's an unbelievable fighter. I just wish we could have seen it sooner against like, guys where they didn't have that asterisk around them. But who knows? Listen, I think if Crawford now goes to 154 and fights Jamel, Jamel's going to be fighting Canelo. Something could go wrong with that fight. Someone could get injured. Canelo could get injured. But yeah, I mean, if he keeps to his word, he said he's going to go to 54. But if he goes to 54 and like he's able to do something there, I mean, boy, you're talking about an all-time great conversation at that stage. Yeah, man, unbelievable performance. Both of these fights, the Tank Garcia and Spence versus Crawford, conclusive endings, one-sided fights. We all wanted to see them, but ultimately it was one-sided. So credit for both guys for making the fight happen, and let's hope this unbelievable year continues. Peace.